A secluded farmhouse in Plainfield that can still send shivers down the spine. In 1957, investigators walked through those doors expecting answers in a missing persons case. What they uncovered was a nightmare that would shock the world, a discovery so disturbing it continues to inspire horror films and, most recently, Netflix's monster series. This wasn't just a farmhouse. It was America's real house of horrors. And tonight, we're stepping inside. Welcome back to Prison Stories. Ed Gein's name has become legend, but all began with what police uncovered inside his Plainfield farmhouse. What started as a simple investigation into a missing woman quickly turned into one of the darkest discoveries in American history crimes. November 16, 1957. In the small town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, the morning began like any other, until something strange unfolded at the local hardware store. Customers came and went, but by evening, the store was locked tight. Its owner, 58-year-old Bernice Wardens, nowhere to be seen. Her son, Frank Wardens, who also happened to be the deputy sheriff, unlocked the store and stepped inside. What he found turned his stomach. The cash register was wide open, empty of money. A trail of blood stained the floor, leading out the back door, and on the counter sat a single receipt, a note for 1 gallon of antifreeze, written that very morning. Frank knew immediately who had purchased it. Just the night before, a local handyman named Ed Gein had been in the store, asking about antifreeze. Ed was a quiet, odd man who lived alone on his family's farm at the edge of town, but suspicion had long surrounded him. And now, every clue pointed in his direction. That evening, police located Gein at a grocery store in West Plainfield. He didn't resist as they brought him in, with a warrant in hand. Deputies turned their attention to his farmhouse, a place most people in town had never dared to step inside. The property sat in silence, isolated by fields and darkness. As officers approached the shed, the air felt heavier, colder. They pushed the door open, flashlights sweeping shadows. And then they froze. Hanging from a wooden crossbeam was the body of Bernice Wardens. Her ankles tied, her torso split open like a deer. It was a discovery so grotesque that even hardened investigators stumbled back in shock. And the horror didn't stop there. The shed was only the beginning. What waited inside Ed Gein's house would transform the quiet town of Plainfield into the stage of one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history. As investigators stepped through the door, the smell of decay struck them first. Thick, choking, unforgettable. Their flashlights cut through the filth. Stacks of newspapers, rotting food, and years of clutter filled the rooms. But hidden among the mess were objects no one could have imagined. In the living room, officers leaned closer to a chair and froze. The upholstery wasn't cloth. It was human skin, stitched together in panels, some patches still covered in hair. Nearby, a lampshade glowed pale under their lights, made from the very same material. The deeper they went, the worse it became. In the bedroom, human skulls had been mounted on bedposts like ornaments. A box held preserved noses. Another contained female body parts, carefully stored as if they were collectibles. On the floor, investigators found a belt decorated with nipples, an accessory too grotesque to comprehend. In the kitchen, the discoveries turned even more unbearable. There were R's of organs. On the stove sat a bag containing Bernice Wardens' heart. A paper bag in another corner held her head. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a butcher's workshop. And then came the side room. Here, investigators uncovered the darkest creations of all, masks made from the faces of women, carefully preserved and displayed. Some were tacked to the wall. Others hung like trophies. One was identified as belonging to Mary Hogan, another woman who had vanished years earlier. A corset stitched from a woman's torso hung like clothing. Leggings made from human skin lay nearby. Even the window blinds had lips fastened to the cords, grotesque little trophies dangling in plain sight. Room by room, the house revealed the full scale of Ed Gein's madness. It wasn't just a home. It was a workshop of human remains. But who were those people butchered to make these things? When officers finally put Ed Gein in handcuffs, he didn't resist. Those who saw him that night described him as calm, even polite, a man who looked more like a shy farmer than someone capable of the horrors inside his home. At the station, investigators began asking questions. What they find out was beyond. He admitted to killing Bernice Wardens, shooting her in his store, loading her body into her truck, and then driving her to his farmhouse. He also confessed to the murder of Mary Hogan, a tavern owner who had disappeared in 1954. But those murders were only part of the story. When pressed about the countless body parts found in his home, Gein explained something even more disturbing. He had spent years robbing graves from local cemeteries. He would dig up freshly buried women who reminded him of his mother, remove their body parts, and bring them back to his farmhouse. From them, he crafted his lamps, chairs, masks, and clothing, what he later called his woman's suit. Despite the grotesque details, Gein showed almost no emotion during his confessions. He spoke about digging up graves and fashioning objects from corpses with flat, matter-of-fact tone, as if describing farm chores. Gein's farmhouse, investigators had to look deeper into his past, and everything pointed back to one person, his mother, Augusta. Ed grew up under her strict, domineering rule. Augusta preached that women, except for herself, were sinful, impure, and destined for damnation. She isolated Ed from the outside world, keeping him on a farm and drilling into him her twisted vision of morality. To Ed, she was more than a mother. She was a figure of absolute authority, almost godlike in his eyes. When she died in 1945, Ed was shattered. Her death wasn't just a personal loss. It left a void he couldn't fill. He boarded up entire rooms in the farmhouse, preserving them exactly as she left them, untouched and sacred. Meanwhile, the rest of the house fell into decay. The contrast was haunting. Pristine shrine rooms for Augusta, surrounded by filth, rot, and the horrors Ed created in secret. Psychiatrists later explained that Gein's grave robbing and his creation of the so-called woman's suit were attempts to bring his mother back. He was severely schizophrenic and needed mental help, but secluded from society, nobody cared to look what he was up to in that farm. The trial of Ed Gein was unlike anything the small Wisconsin community had ever seen. Reporters from across the country crowded into the courtroom, eager to cover the case of the Plainfield ghoul. But even before testimony began, there was one pressing question. Was Ed Gein truly sane? In 1958, Gein was found guilty of first-degree murder. But when it came to the issue of sanity, the court ruled in his favor. He was declared insane and committed to Central State Hospital, a secure psychiatric facility in Waupun, Wisconsin. Years later, he was transferred to Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, where he spent the rest of his life. He remained institutionalized for nearly 3 decades, until his death in 1984 at the age of 77. Even in death, controversy followed him. His gravestone at the Plainfield Cemetery was repeatedly vandalized by souvenir hunters until it was finally removed for good. Even though Ed Gein's crime shook Wisconsin in the 1950s, his influence stretched far beyond Plainfield. What he left behind wasn't just a police file or a chilling farmhouse. It was a blueprint for some of the most terrifying characters in horror history. Just 2 years after his arrest, novelist Robert Bloch used Gein as inspiration for Psycho. Norman Bates, with his obsession with his mother and his double life, was drawn straight from Gein's twisted devotion to Augusta. Later, filmmakers would take even darker liberties. Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with his massive human skin and backwoods isolation, was an exaggerated reflection of Gein's grisly crafts. And Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs, who fashioned a woman's suit from his victims, borrowed directly from Gein's most disturbing obsession. Now, decades later, his shadow still lingers. Netflix's Monster series has chosen Ed Gein as its next subject, proving that the fascination hasn't faded. His story continues to haunt America. Thank you for watching Prison Stories. If you found the video interesting, hit like, and subscribe us for more intriguing videos from the world of true crime.